was a sea of people there. There were so many people out to the main road. We couldn't even see the rest around the Capitol. And so we started working our way through the crowd, and some women came down up the stairway. There's two stairways, one going to the inaugural stage, one going into the Capitol. And they simply come down from there because the Capitol Police were pepper spraying and shooting tear gas. Well, we could hear little booms in the background, but you couldn't identify what it was because there were just too many people there. And pushing because they had my head tilted down, and I was protecting me from the tear gas. So that's the kind of the narrative they used in court. So anyhow, so I retreated from that area back to the main assembly area, and then they locked on the building. They wouldn't let us out of the building. We were surrounded by guards. They pushed us out of the doorway, which is out the side of where I came in behind the inaugural stage, which is the other side of the Capitol building. We didn't even know how to get out of the building. And finally, I realized that eventually was going to push us out that doorway. There's people pushing in, we couldn't get out, they're smashing us. Women were falling down. I'm up against two officers. One was a big black dude, one was a short lady that was also colored, and he kept hitting me with his baton. And I finally said to him, I said, "You do that one more time, I'm going to throw you through that wall." I don't think I quite used those words, but I was very insistent. You're not going to hit me again. But anyhow, the woman said, "Sorry, man." She smiled, and he frowned at me, but didn't hit me again. And then I said, "You got to get them into that doorway over there. You cannot get out of the building. They're getting smashed. This is craziness. I mean, I don't know what's going on here, but you need to get the doors opened up." So they finally sent Max into the doorway to get the doors opened up. And then here I am finally looking in the building on this war. There's innocent casualties along the way to expose the fraud to the rest of people. Whether we're in jail or because we're trying to expose the fraud, it's just one of those things that people have to see. And when people see it for themselves, they're not going to believe it. Because if Trump sends the military to arrest all these people for the criminal activity, and they don't know why, they think he's a dictator and they're going to fight against our military, whether it's on the left or on the right. So unfortunately, certain people in a certain area, we have to demonstrate to the people before we can arrest them and hold them responsible. But I guarantee, unlike any other time in history, because this has never been done before, even the people in conservatives don't believe that they're ever going to be held accountable, they're ever going to be brought to justice. But this is a whole different time. They will be brought to justice. We will clean house, and they'll all be exposed. And once you see Cash Patel and the rest of these people in there, Cash Patel is in charge of the FBI. And once he's in place, then he can start ordering the rest and start using those people to arrest people for the crimes that they've committed. Doges covering the fraud that's happening. And so once he gets the fraud in place, I think we're going to see a lot of justice happen pretty quickly. But Trump is doing everything. Like I said, the first thing he was announced to be a dictator. Well, look at how many executive orders he signed. He had to do certain things. So basically, Trump is running the entire country right now without an administration to help him. But that's about to change.
Do you see any hope that the people that did you wrong will be held accountable for it? The judges?
The answer is yes. And if all of us do little pictures, and I get myself in touch with J6ers all the time, people get mad at me when I say, all those people that plea bargained threw us under the bus. They allowed government and police law to prosecute the rest of it. Now that's not bad to somebody who did that, because I don't believe that people did it willingly and knowingly with an arm rush, you know. Music is different. They fell in the trap because they were fearful, they were scared, and some people couldn't make a decision because of their families, they couldn't find it. I mean, there's a lot of decisions to make, you know. Unless you're very with somebody else, then that's going to happen. But really, they set the path and we established the laws to prosecute the rest of us. And if we would have all, none of us would have plea bargained, we could have took this to court, and in 2 years, we would have had a remedy for all of us. But because people didn't hold the line of the fight, we had to go through the process, and that's what we did.
Did you, when you were incarcerated, did you know that the American people stood behind the J6ers?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I do think that we have some fantastic people, but there's someone in their family that's liberal, that's really upset, they don't like it, so they want to keep the peace. But I'll be honest with you, over 95% of people want to join and be a part of what I'm doing. The only reason they do not do it is because there's a family member. But they come in and keep me all the time. But I think what we're starting to see right now, people feel out. People don't care what the left people anymore because they've gone so mental. But I think everyone's getting to the point they want to stand up. They realize they should have been in the fight earlier, and they haven't been because they were just hoping to keep peace. You know what I'm saying? You can't keep peace with people. Like the Bible says, I did not come to bring peace but a sword, to remove the evil from amongst you. So then you've got to decide whether you're going to be part of that evil or you're going to separate yourself from it. At what point can you deal with the lunacy that some of your own family members, you know? Because God even said, you know, it could be your own family members that are going to be the biggest problem. So we have been informed of standards to live by. When I tell Virginians, I said the best thing we could ever do is live by a person. The reason why a lot of Virginians plea bargain and went through what they went through is because they were worried about the outcome. If you do what is right in your life and you let God deal with the outcome, things will work out much better. And yes, I'm true because I held the line. I was one of the last people that they tried to throw down. It was like the last minute. If everyone else had done the same thing, we might have spent a year, 2 years, 4 years in jail. We could have cleaned things. But look at that hindsight. Did I know how this was going to end at the time? No. I mean, in some ways, a lot of these guys, one of the guys that was with me that got arrested, he basically got a month in jail. They threw out the felony. We gave him misdemeanor, but he was there just like I was. But he wasn't assaulted by us. If he got a lesser charge, we took a plea down. But what they did was weaponize the justice system against us to anyone who's willing to oppose the people. We also know that you can't go out there for the whole responsibility to get what they want. He pleaded guilty to it, so I've had to rule on that fact. How are we going to hold judges or how are we going to hold prosecutors responsible for? In my case, I had the project, they didn't plea bargain, and they went ahead and created a treason attack against. So at this point, it's been a fraud, and now I can hold them accountable. If you plea bargain, you wouldn't have been able to. But those people that held the line are exposed to these judges, and that's what I'm really proud of, is the people who stand up and fight, because we can make a difference.
Anybody else had a question?
Ask him what his understanding is of the more than one constitution in play.
Did you hear that question?
No, I didn't hear that.
What's your understanding of is there more than one constitution currently being implemented against people and or persons? And what constitution, in your mind, were you standing on in this process?
Well, that's a good question because really this is the foundation of everything we're fighting for. So the answer is yes, we have a constitution. Does our country recognize it? No. We're under British rule. When we broke away from Britain, it was laws for me, but not for me. And that's what we're seeing right now. These are all case laws. And then you got to understand the bar is nothing more than the British registry. These are all case laws, not based upon the Constitution, but based upon our judges and stuff, and then the next person gives their case based upon that. And so they rule on the particular situation. So until it's appealed to the Supreme Court, and use constitutional principles to override it, this is how they operate. But saying that we have a constitution and they're actually using it, we haven't been. And that's eventually why this is going to have to go through a military tribunal because the courts aren't trained to operate in the Constitution and haven't been for a long time. So how are you ever going to have justice? So basically, we're going to have the military table of mankind up down. Basically, how this is going to end. We're going to have military operating under constitutional values. We will get their day. And the other thing is unlike what they do to us, everyone's guilty, we got to prove their innocence. And we need to prove that they're guilty and they've actually committed the crime. We have the founding fathers who rather than have a guilty man go free than release a man go to jail. So if we're going to redo the system correctly, we've got to abide by those principles and the rule of law, which is given to us by God. The founding fathers those laws based upon biblical principles. And I told everyone, if you just live your life morally under God's law, the Constitution will defend you in the end, because those are moral principles by which the law was encased and put into operation by the founding fathers. So it's basically a moral principle you live by. You don't have to be a constitutional scholar to figure it out. Just do what is right and you will be tolerated.
What's the simple answer to eliminating the, or reducing, actually, how do we get rid of the British rule in your mind?
It'd be very simple. You know the easiest way to do it is if everyone quit participating in the system, to quit, paying your taxes overnight, the government would collapse. They need us to survive. They're using us. In order for them to exist, we have to participate in this system. And what I've done as an individual, I've built batteries at hospitals that are bad, self-sufficient systems for people. I make people so self-sufficient from the community itself that you no longer have to participate in the system unless you want to. And when we get to the point we can participate because we want to, we allow government to operate because we decide to fund them. But at this point, the American is coming, into the government, it's just not me. Pretty much that simple. But there's always those people that go, oh, if you don't pay your taxes, I'll take this from you. We're self-divided and we're conflicted in what we do. But even though it's not, what we've uncovered so far, Judge and everybody else, our financial system is fraud. It's funding terrorism, and under our code, you cannot fund terrorism, so it's illegal to pay your taxes. So just tell them, at what point, I'm not first one in the tax team. There's no requirement that requires you to file in the first place. If everyone just quit filing, or you can just file in the just don't participate for a while and see how long it's from that. It would collapse in and of itself.
Did the question of a common law trial by jury ever come up in your mind in dealing with the defense, as opposed to the jury trial, emergency jury trial that the British system's giving us?
The problem is they won't acknowledge any of that. I'm not sure that's the path to go down. For me, the path to go down is in the judges and the crowd. We can circle back there with constitutional law labor, but we're not recognizing it. So the issue is, let me generate situation. Your goal is to find your case, but your real goal is to expose the fraud. That could be clear about everything else. Whether you win your case or not, expose the fraud. And every January 6th has the ability to expose it in equally an element of fraud. If the January 6th were to come together and say we have a team attorney looking over the court from the shoulders and compile the information on each case, we would have a blueprint for what they're doing, the level of fraud in each case, and then we could have made a huge difference in how we interact with and how we expose them. But every attorney and every person and every individual together says you wouldn't have worked together. They thought they had security. And that's the best way to do it. We have the constitutional law. We'll do it this way. We'll do it represent the fraud. The bottom line is, everyone will find guilty and never win their case because the deals are illegitimate. So the best thing we could have done is come together and expose the individual fraud in each case, compile that information so we can go after them later in an appeal. So here's what's interesting about an appeal versus winning your case. If you know you can disprove the situation that they found you guilty of in the first case, on an appeal they can't add things and bring more information in. Whatever they made more claim to, they claimed. If you can rebut all of those things they made claim to on your appeal, then you can go after them. Second more, you can hold them accountable for damage. Because now we've actually committed a criminal act by wrongfully incarcerating you and creating a damaged party. That's under constitutional law. Once you disprove everything, now we have libel suits against federal government officials, and anyone who misrepresents, whether it be media or anyone else, they all have libel suits. And right now we have a $50 billion to $100 billion class action lawsuit. Each individual can have 5 to 10 individual lawsuits based on the damages they include on January 6th. So the bottom line is, even if we win our cases and it's acknowledged that we were not guilty, there's people that have to believe that we did something wrong because of the media. The only way we public opinion is when we sue for damage we have to pay. Then left and right, when we think about the situation, it must have been bad. We wouldn't have gotten paid money for damages because we did something wrong. So the damage part of it is important to show the world that not only are we innocent, but yeah, they created damage to us on top of it.
Did the Bill of Rights ever come up in your mind or your attorney's mind as far as how to expose the fraud or enforce the rights that were guaranteed under the Constitution?
Well, I don't know how you make that argument because they don't want to use it. They would have just gone right through the system. The best thing you do is, in my case, is that my attorney even told me I was right on everything, which very few people will ever say that. I don't think he believed the crime. I think he believed the conspiracy that was there. And how I represented myself. But basically, I was there to put them on notice that this is the trial about them, not about me. And what they're doing is committing an act of fraud and potentially free from the outskirts.
So exposing the fraud is one thing, getting someone in government to do something about it is different. So do you think the Cash Patel situation is key along with the new Attorney General?
Well, even in a class action lawsuit, in order to win a class action lawsuit, there's two things that really have to be proven at this point. So this has been Dodge and the federal agency is going to handle things, especially the pressure. First, we've got to show that the election was stolen or not as a trap. Those two things are contingent on really winning the class action lawsuit. And any massive, obviously we can get some damages for being wrongfully incarcerated. But then again, the line is whether or not were you paying because you did something wrong and you got that kind of a penalty, did you actually win your appeal? See, if you win your appeal, then that's the time that you have. You know what I'm saying? If you didn't win your appeal and you pleaded guilty and you got a penalty, you're going to have a harder time going after it. Unless, of course, the whole thing was a trap to begin with, and that everything was under threat to much diversion in regards to those individuals, they'll have some claims as well. So I tell everyone, at this point, the only way we're going to win, especially for those people who think is once that information comes forward, that the whole thing, otherwise at this point, we're arguing that we admitted to it. You got a pardon, you're going to have a hard time damage as much as you've done with the case that you've been happening ever since.
Do you think that if they just pay off people for the harm they did and continue on with their crimes, how do you see that being stopped? Like instead of people are like, oh, just take your suit, money, and go on your way, and we're just going to, we meaning the British, are just going to continue violating the rights of the Americans.
Well, we're a woman. The bottom line is that the different soldiers and the difference is we're not fighting with them. We're fighting with ideas, with things between our ears right now. It's a different kind of psychological warfare. But no, there can never be peace until there's true justice. There can't be forgiveness until they're held accountable for them. You can't show embrace until they've been held accountable and either damages imposed or go to jail time. You see what I'm saying? These people need to pay. Can we show embrace after that fact because we've held them dead to rights? Sure. But until we hold them dead to rights on the actions that they've done, they're getting the past. That's not acceptable. These people need to be held accountable, necessarily executed, hanging, whatever it is. And there has to be a public execution that people have to understand it. Doesn't mean they all have to do that way, but there needs to be retribution for what they've done. Bottom line.
Who or what in your mind is necessary to bring that into being? Do you see that currently formulating on the horizon, or is it still over the horizon? Well,
as soon as Trump left office, you have to look no further than Trump's veto. 13,838. I mean, anytime we show there's foreign interference in the election, that basically puts Trump in power. I believe we've been operating under probably the government this whole time. I believe Trump has always controlled the football. He wasn't recognized by Congress as president, so we had a duality of presidents. We had two presidents. We had Joe Biden acting as a counterfeit as far as the corporation of the United States, and then we had Trump operating under the constitutionality and control the military to prevent us from having an escalation during the war. I believe Trump has controlled it. Joe Biden never carried the football. So I believe there's been a family government going on with duality and concern the fraud 2020 with Joe Biden and everything he's done up, his pardon and all that. And here's what's nice about it. They're going to be brought to Congress after the president. They can't leave it. They're going to have to tell everything. They're going to have to cross-examine everything. And at some point, once the election's overturned, all the presidents will probably be meaningless, and they will have self-incriminated themselves, and we will not allow that. I think that's all going to go down.
What information are you privy to that you can share, perhaps that some like us here who aren't as deeply involved directly, like what is it that you can give us as far as facts that you've observed or believe with pretty good assurance that we should know?
Well, it's pretty simple. If you're part of the Q post, you would understand the nothing I have. I don't have any special information. I looked around and invested people and how things work in the military and things like that. It kind of gives me an idea of how things are done a certain way and in front of us. And that's the only advantage I have. Anyone in the military will probably be privy to that information too. The bottom line is the information that I have is given us through the Q post. And the Q post was the highest level of intel ever shared with the people. Q is the number 17 from that, before Trump was always 17 times. He's doing that. He walked the Q symbol. Cash Patel wore a pin with his classic numbers. There's a flag with Q on it, on his little pet that he had on his shirt, on his wrist. So we have that. So there's Tom's on there. And Q is military. You had Q clearance in the military. You had access to 17 of the intelligence agencies. So that kind of tells you what Q is. And there's the highest level of the American people. But as long as there's an ongoing investigation, they can't tell us who they're going after or what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? But they can point you to the information that's already in print and where to find it, blah, blah, blah. And so they've done that over and over again. We've had confirmations that Trump and Q are operating together. Q will out with it or run something like that, which is impossible. With that artificial intelligence, to try to repeat something somebody said, it's impossible to hit that magic number and without getting the information. So what we're seeing is those who are watching Q in live time, we're seeing the confirmation that yes, it's coming from the highest level of government. We knew as a military intel, the information that was being released. But the question is, the good guys or bad guys releasing this information? Were they creating a psyop or what was going on? But yes, it was a psychological operation, but it was a psychological operation with everyone on board because we had to bypass the media. Everyone who was a little bit of a savant picked up on this patterns of behavior, and they ran with it. So we became the news to bypass the news cycle, get the information out to inside, which wouldn't have been possible for the military and the normal news they would have. We, the people, were the time the whole time to spread the news and spread the information and disseminate it to the people who understand what was going on. And then that's why even Don Jr. and I were, you got to start listening to conspiracy people. They're getting it right all the time. They're doing this all the time. Look here, look there, these conspiracy people are right. They were doing this in Utah so we could spread it. And we were playing crazy. Now we're, even in congressional settings, conspiracies, they got 30-0. They've been right on everything. So they're leading up to that. We became because they couldn't do it out. You couldn't directly do it out. Because if Q directly brought it out and say, listen, what's happening, people wouldn't believe it, or they'd consider them crazy, or that's just a conspiracy. And Q didn't want to do that. They had to keep an arm length, and they just had to give us the intel so we could keep the information out. And that's what Q is. But, we were able to Q on. And QAnon doesn't exist. Q is military intelligence. Nons are people like you and me. And even when Crash was he was even questioned by very conservative individuals. He didn't hold the QAnon thing. He's not really about QAnon. Well, he doesn't. He doesn't know what QAnon is because we all have different beliefs. That was labeled to us by the movement, but he wasn't. Q is. And that was the question that we asked. Who is Q? Q is military intelligence. That's really the answer. That's eventually going to come to the forefront.
Anybody else? Questions?
Do you see Congress maintaining their offices, or is that something that might be going away temporarily?
You know, I can't answer that, but I can tell you the deals weren't made with certain people in Congress. Certain people weren't playing there because they made a deal with Trump. Because I need to step back 1 second and have everyone understand that if you don't understand what got us into this fraud and how it was created in the first place, you're not going to understand why Trump is doing the things he's doing, the deals he's made with people. But D.C. is a honeypot. Say, for instance, you were a congressional individual and you went to D.C. And you get there, they wine you and dine you in the town, they slip a Mickey in your drink, and next thing you know, they get you in a compromising situation from a kid or an underage person from Epstein Island. They hold this over your head. So you can see a very good Republican out there, he's trying to do the right thing, but he's been compromised. And then all of a sudden he's voting a certain way, and you're thinking, oh, he's a great guy, and all of a sudden he gets a call, and he gets a call. And they tell him, you got to vote a different way, you need to get this bill passed. And then all of a sudden he doesn't vote for that anymore. And you're like, wait a minute, he's always been really good, why did he shift his vote? Because they're all compromised. And if you understand, our CIA has always been involved in Hustler, Playboy, and all these organizations that are out there. They were all psychological operations to bring in people that had large corporations and businesses and also do the same thing for them. You'll see how they control the corporations and politicians, get anything done. So it didn't matter if you're a Republican, it didn't matter if you're a Democrat. They ran off, you couldn't have any constructive change because they control us, because everyone is compromised. I mean, I always say, you know the difference between mafia and government? Size. That's the only difference. They operated the same way. I mean, they're holding it over your head. Whatever they can use against you in such a way to control you, that's what they're going to do. And that's what we've seen with Congress. So the deals weren't struck by Trump and these people, because Trump basically came and said, we know you've done these things. We know you're trapped into it. Some of them continue doing hurtful things and hurt children and other things. These people are going to hang. There's just no way around it. I mean, those are unacceptable behaviors. But some of them were put in situations that they had no control over the drug, and they understood those situations. So they made deals to bring the information forward and play a part in this. And I think it's something that you're going to see these people reveal the information, come forward about it. And yes, we may not have the excuse those people, even though they did things that were bad. Or did they do it intentionally? You see what I'm saying? There's intent. Or was it a setup on them? And so we got to take those type of things into consideration as well. Now, if you're going to go ahead and continue doing those things because you're just a bad actor, well, I got caught one time, so I'm just going to continue creating harm. Well, I don't know what kind of deals we're going to make with them. They may be behind bars the rest of their life or executed, but there's, deals have to be made in order to move things forward. And so Trump has had to work with people that aren't necessarily perfect people in order to get things done. So there's been a little bit of that behind the back end as well, making deals. Otherwise, all economies will fail.
Forgive me, I didn't hear the introduction. Did you have a military background at some point or military service?
So no, I worked for defense contractors, so I was hired to go in and take care of the project that they were working on for 15, 20 years, and they had to get a contract for it. They had to make the thing last. So let me tell you how our government works. So my good years to sell tires to our military, and then they went to a different company because it was the lowest bidder. Well, these tires were blowing out, they're wearing out. They spent 3 times as more money than the original tires they were operating with. So the government decided, you know what, we can't have this anymore. So we have to have what they call a scale in which we judge longevity of material. Like, for instance, we had a gun where it had to shoot so many times without jamming, or this had to happen so many times, because it had to be the cost of usage. You see what I'm saying? Which is really the best way you can ever judge anything, because if you do it based upon cost of usage, then you know what the actual overall cost is going to be. So So a lot of times, a lot of these companies have come with great technologies, but they couldn't get it in front of the people they need to get in front of in order to get the contract to the generals. And a lot of times they have to wind the giant the generals, they have to take them to Africa, pay a bunch of money to get the contracts. And sometimes the best technology didn't get as good or servicemen. But in order to get the contracts, they had to have a certain service life that things had to operate under. So a lot of times they'd have the contracts ready to go, but they couldn't meet the requirements of it. And it was a $1 billion contract. And here's a project we're working on forever. They call me in there, I'd redesign it and make it work so it would continue operating and you wouldn't have breakdowns. That's when I was called to do things because I'm not only a machinist, I do engineering, I do everything. So I can take projects that we're working on forever and fix them within a week or two and then get the contract. I was called in a project that I probably wasn't supposed to see, that I didn't sign any security clearance or anything like that. So nothing was ever held over my head. They go, well, you're not, and I don't work on a project, use it for this, it's not going to work. Well, that's classified, that's supposed to do. I said, do you want this thing to work or not? We need to, put all these things that are applicable to the situation so we can interact because this is part of your problem. So yeah, I got a chance to see a lot of things that most people wouldn't see, but I never signed my life away. If I can talk about any of them, I don't have to care. And that's how I've always operated. I'm not going to sign my life away so somebody can control me. And that just makes me a liability. Even if something has been declassified, if I work on the project I talked about, then I could be in trouble. No, I'm not going to go there. If you want me to work on it, I'm not signing anything.
What's your understanding of the difference between, from the DC perspective initially, the difference between territorial jurisdiction and municipal jurisdiction, and a correlating question from some of our perspectives here? The British are the territorial aspect and the Vatican is related to the municipal aspect, which of course through the extension of the 14th Amendment comes out wherever that will reach into the people's lives, onto the, not on the land, but through the, basically the sea jurisdiction. So any comments about any of that?
Well, see, I could have gone into court, I could have done the whole straw man thing and played the other game. I'm not sure it would have been effective or not because I really believe the operation at this point is not a matter of winning your case. It's about exposing the judges later. So I didn't even try to go in there with any kind of straw man argument or anything of that nature because I believe it was a moot point in the sense of holding people accountable because we're heading into the justice stage. And I felt that was far more important than having to dismiss my case because they didn't want to deal with me because they couldn't move forward rather than exposing the fraud. So in my case, I chose to expose the fraud because that was paramount to help everyone, not benefit myself.
Is your case available to read online, a syllabus?
I think anyone can get it. They may have to pay for it, but you can ask for those records, absolutely, and how I instructed the judge.
What is your understanding of, are there any, what may be an oxymoron statement, but a patriotic bar member? A member of the attorney, an attorney.
Well, how can you be a patriotic attorney when you swear an oath to the bar?
Right.
Well, so the question, that begs the question then, how can we possibly ever expect any justice if all the people in justice are bar members?
Well, the answer to your question is right there. Who's the only one that swears an oath to the Constitution? You're the only one.
The executive, the commander-in-chief.
Nope. There's one more.
The
Supreme Court.
The Attorney General?
The Supreme Court has to swear an oath to the Constitution.
And where do we find that information?
Well, they all have to swear it, but the only ones that are here to swear the oath. Now, then the question comes down to, if they fail to do their due diligence and they swore that oath, now they've committed treason on themselves. But as far as the rest of the bar members or individuals that are judges and stuff like that, they didn't have to swear that oath. They swore an oath to the Bible, but they didn't swear an oath to the Constitution. Now the Supreme Court died, so then that begs the question, if they swore an oath to the Constitution and they violated their oath, treason, isn't it?
Yes, so the question is, are not all Supreme Court justices bar members?
They've done both. So the question is are they swearing an oath to the Constitution? Are they in violation of it? That's really the question needs to be asked. Matter of fact, that question is actually being asked with the Brunswick case right now, and for the Supreme Court, because that'll be interesting. Because does the oath of office actually mean something? And if it does, it's treason on their part if they swear the oath, especially for Congress.
So in your opinion, all the state governments, is there any, well, because of that same kind of general point, all the state, is it possible all the state courts are just frauds?
Well, they're operating under unruly law. I mean, they're not operating the Constitution. So, yeah, they're basically making claim that you're a slave because Britain owns us, is what it boils down to. And this is 1776 all over again.
And what's your understanding of the 1872 Constitution followed by, yeah, I guess Constitution, the corporate Constitution, followed by the Treaty of Washington?
That's it.
Am I still there or am I muted?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So, repeat that question again, because I had someone deep in on me and it interrupted the...
Well, 2 points. From my perspective, the 1872 government is known to be a corporate government, which potentially is where the British are getting their supposed authority, not constitutional authority, followed by what relationship does the Treaty of Washington, if you are familiar with it at all, which came after the 1872 corporate installation.
Well, to answer your question, they slowly undermine it. Really, what turned us into slaves is when they formed the Federal Reserve System, when they started trading the commodity. Basically, they worked their way into our congressional and judicial system over that period of time. But what really made us slaves is when they formed the Federal Reserve System, which basically put us all on the grid, which made us basically, I would say, heirs or co-heirs to the debt that they created, make the debtors, and by being debtors, we're now slaves. That's ultimately what took away the rest of our freedoms, and ultimately what they're going to do is, what their goal was, ultimately control us in every way possible, and they were going to do that with the vaccines, they were going to do everything else, because as soon as you get a vaccine under the patents that they have, you're now considered their property, because you're no longer made in the image of God, you're made in their image, because now they've redone your DNA. That was where they're eventually heading with all this. So basically they were having complete ownership of all of us in their soul, where they wanted to go with this. And it's a spiritual battle as much as a physical battle, because we're dealing with physical and spiritual realms all at the same time.
And so, in a nutshell, what's the simple play call for a non-violent success story to getting back to the fundamentals of the Constitution?
Well, like I said, the bottom line for all of us, if we all decided not to participate in the system, they lose. The problem is that as individuals, we've never been organized. And then when we do organize, we form groups. And that's always been our biggest conflict. So you got to understand how the CIA, the FBI, and all operate. They love it when you form a group, whether you form a militia in Montana, whether you form a militia here, whether you form the Tea Party network, they infiltrate, they put people at the top, they just make the whole organization that crumbles. Now, if we come together as individuals, we don't form good principles. And we don't have a ringleader that says, I'm going to make a call, I'm going to get everyone to show up, I'm in charge of this operation, and we can do it as individuals because we show up because of principles. When they come to go after us, we surround them because we do it as a moral principle, then they lose. They can't infiltrate, they're not a group, they're not an organization, they're individuals coming together based upon principles, and we become what the Constitution calls us, self-governing. And that's what we need to do. We just got to understand how enemies operate and how they infiltrate us, so we don't allow this to ever happen again.
Now, how does one of we, the self-governing people, empower a single local or county official to support this Constitution the way they're supposed to, or is it an exercise in futility?
Well, it's only an exercise of futility futility when we form groups. When it becomes relevant, is come together as individuals based on principles rather than group, because the group has an association with this person and with that person. If you come together as individuals and you like someone or something, you're not part of a group. It's not bringing the group down. You're not a club. You're not like some motorcycle gang, something of that nature that you can just crush. You're just individuals meeting together. The biggest thing that we can ever do to win is create knowledge in individuals, not organizations, never groups. See, this is what Constantine did. Constantine canonized the scriptures. Why? Because there were so many different beliefs they couldn't control the people. So they formed religion. They canonized the 66 books of the scriptures. Why? Because they knew what they believed. Why do you want to know what they believe? Control them. Now, as long as we're forming groups and we have a certain set of ideologies, we're going to have some differences, and we're just teaching each other the best we can based upon our knowledge. If we don't have a group, they can't infiltrate. They say you're part of this or part of that, or you believe this, or they can't put us in a box. They can't control us. They don't know what to do with us. We're outside their maintenance.
What's your position or understanding of the best way to self-identify as an American? And I don't know what state you're at, but like, would you be a Michigander or a Utahan, or how do you like to protect yourself after your experience as an individual, after your experience being assaulted and framed for January 6th?
I just call ourselves patriots, standing up for the truth. That's who we identify with. We're nothing more than that. I mean, and is the militia a good thing? Actually, it's a good thing. It just means I'm a citizen when standing up against a tyrannical government. We have to call ourselves a group or an organization like the militia of Montana or root for that. Yeah, we start identifying as a group that day, and that could be our own downfall because now we're associated with something infiltrated, and you got someone at the top controlling the organization, having a group of people that get together. They're not the one to go motorbike riding or whatever. Get together as a group, they're part of the club. You can just get together, and there's no affiliation. So if someone does something right, it doesn't make the organization right. It's just one wackadoodle person that happened to come, and meet with us, and I knew who the person was. But yeah, we didn't have no group or affiliation that way. I knew of the guy, but that's it. It doesn't destroy the organization in a sense, and how the media would portray it. You understand, the media is what's caused this problem. We haven't been portrayed in the proper light. So don't form groups, don't form organizations. Start teaching people based upon base knowledge, principles, and look from that aspect and come together as individuals who have like-minded ideas. Not that they have to be perfectly aligned or the same, but we can still come together because we can be on different sides of the spectrum and still have a lot of shared common belief. Great. But it doesn't form an organization for infiltration or destruction of our own due diligence that we're trying to bring forward to people.
So what would be your individual approach if someone from a local or county or state law enforcement group decided to frame you personally, imprison you personally, not let you out? How would you deal with that as an individual with whatever friends you have on the outside? When the law enforcement is not giving the slightest amount of credence to the Constitution, and with the judges mixed with the crooked county prosecutors, what would you do in that case?
What I've done is the opposite of what everyone else has done. And that's what I told every January 6th to do. I said, you need to be outspoken. Before I walked in the courtroom, I literally did a news interview moments before I walked in the courtroom. Matter of fact, they had to shut down the court proceedings about what I said on the news, blah, 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 before we could even have the court proceedings. What I did is I was constantly telling my story. If I didn't constantly tell my story, I can promise you, when you hear my whole story, you wouldn't believe it, because nobody could go through all this stuff. Nobody has done all this stuff. When I kept people informed the entire way, and they found what I was doing on a continual basis, It's not if I did it, this is what actually happened. And so it's just like a set of events, you know, somebody else has gone through a life and they tell you a story. It's like, oh, my way to government. Like, for instance, I get my pardon. Here's another example. This just happened. I had I believe it was NBC, I think it was NBC come over, or no, yeah, I think so. They came over to do a news interview. Come on over, let's do a news interview. So they just said, the only thing I asked is, I know you only have a 5-minute clip on TV. And they tried to use this in one of my court cases because they said something that would kind of incriminate me. But then I made sure I had the whole video footage. And I showed them in entirety. I said, you took one thing I said out of context, and you didn't hear the entire context. This is the problem. And I put them there in the courtroom. So they knew they were taking things out of context. This was the way the operates. And I told all these news, I don't care if you report on me. And I don't care if you do a 5-minute blip. I don't care if you get your own opinion. I don't care. The only thing I'm going to ask you to do is you put my entire video footage out there, at least on YouTube or Facebook, where people can see it. So they can judge for themselves. And you can do it however you want. I said, as long as the rest of the information is there where everyone can see, I will do the interview. And that's what I've done. And the good part is all these news organizations have actually done that. So I've been very happy that at least they put the whole information out there, even if they take it out of context, because people can see the whole interview, see how they put it. You go, you know, that was kind of shitty that they didn't put the rest of the stuff in there and kind of skewed it from what you said. I said, yeah. I said, then you see what the news is doing. So that's what I have done, is I made it public. So they were over doing a movie to it, like in my part. So I go down and I see the sheriff and I ask him to look at my record to make sure it's corrupt. Because here's the problem. We have a J6er who was killed. We don't know why he was killed by police, but he was shot, killed. And he has a predicate. But his record may not have been cleaned up, and it may have been the reason for the killing or the incident. We don't know. We don't know the information he was killed. But I'm concerned because what if my record has been cleared? They couldn't look at it. So I called the FBI. I said, can you look at my record? Has my record been scrubbed? They couldn't look at it. I was investigated by Secret Service. I called the Secret Service guy. He was very nice. You know, matter of fact, I'll tell you a little about Secret Service agent. Well, let me back up 1 second here and explain a little bit more of my story. I have been treated very well by all my check-in officers for January 6th. I had a check-in officer that I called her, she was a new one out of D.C., and she hung up. I said, I'm going to travel down to New Mexico to set up an off-grid system. I've had this to work for months and months and months. So the condition of my release is I can't go anywhere but Montana, and anywhere else I travel, I have to give them 10 days notice. I said, Judge, that's not going to work. I said, I'm going to go to anywhere in Montana that I need to go, no questions asked. I said, anywhere else, I'll agree to give you 10 days notice before I travel. And the judge agreed to it, so I was able to travel to Montana anytime I wanted. And so then I called into my check-in officer. I said, you know, I'm traveling Holy Night. This is my 10 days notice. I'm just letting you know that I'll at least be in contact with you at least 24 hours before I leave. That's what I did. Now, I've always given more than enough time to, more than 10 days and I'm going to go somewhere. Even though I have the ability to leave within 24 hours because I am traveling all the United States, I got to get things done. And because I run a business, I can't just plan something a week. It might not be this week, it might be next week. It kind of depends on when my jobs are done before I can travel and do this other job. Because it doesn't make any sense traveling to this job. I'm losing jobs here at home, you know what I'm saying? So I kind of have to coordinate. And sometimes it comes down almost to the last day before I'm getting ready to travel. So I had to set up that way. So anyhow, I had this travel plan to go down this off-grid system up to first I sold batteries to. We're expanding a system, adding more solar panels and everything else. So I went down there. So I had a friend of mine. So I caught this guy for fraud. He ended up taking one of my guns from my house and he took it down to Colorado. The bottom line is, so I went down to New Mexico. I went down to Colorado to pick up my gun and went down to New Mexico to do the job. Well, this lady had hung up on me a bunch of times, and I didn't know if I was going to get a chance to travel, but I already gave notice, so I knew I had rights to, and I was concerned about this lady, so I go down to my sheriff, and I said, Sheriff, I said, this lady, she's hung up me several times, in the conversation with her, and sure it's approved to go down there, and she won't even finish the conversation with me, and I said, this can turn into a bad situation. Well, I go down to New Mexico, you cover my gun, go down to New Mexico, do the job, come back. I'm not supposed to have a gun, but my legal rights mean someone else can. And it's not illegal for me to pick up a gun, you know what I'm saying? It's just illegal for me to have it in my possession by myself. even though I have piles of guns and you get access to any gun anytime I want. It's like I said, I'm not worried about it. You take my guns away. Not only will I take your guns, but then I'll get all mine back as well. But I'm willing to do what's required in the law and not have a possession in my home, because that's a condition of my release. And so I'm going to abide by that. You know, I'm not afraid to tell them that I used to be able to stand to the death. I said, if we go to the Civil War, you think I care that there's a condition on me that I can't have a gun? I will get whatever I need and I'll be fine back. That's why I told the judge. I said, you know, that's a whole different set of standards. The judge is, you know, I think the judge appreciates me being very honest. But on the other side, so I went down to New Mexico, I get back, and I get checked out for Secret Service. And this guy was a really cool guy that came and investigated me. And then I didn't know at the time, I said, yeah, I do work with these companies as defense contractors. I said, you're the guy that worked on a contract for laser shot in this company? And I said, yeah, I'm the guy that did. And so the guy goes, Mr. Munzer was cleared. He was very nice to me. And then the sheriff goes, what you used to do? You know, he didn't know my background or anything. He didn't tell anyone. Just things I did. But yeah, I got cleared by Secret Service. So when I was doing this check-in, I called him up and everything else. And nobody looked at my records. So we're live on TV. We just got to do the news report. I'm down at the courthouse, and I'm telling them what happened. You know, there's no way for me to find out my records. I said, this is very disconcerting. So I tell you what, I'm going to go over and I'm going to go buy a gun at the gun shop. So the news is right there when I'm buying a gun. I have my card and I have everything, right? I go down there, buy a gun, denied being able to purchase a gun. So what that tells me is they haven't cleaned up my record. Now, the NICS system, I just have to submit the information in the NICS system. They're going to have to get it on change. Maybe it's changed already, maybe it hasn't maybe it hasn't, I don't know. But I have to send that information. But here's the problem. What if I got pulled? What if I had a gun in my vehicle? Even have the legal right. What if I get pulled over and my license plate run like it did when I was in Idaho? I mean, if my license plate got run, I had like 20 or 30 cops show up. I mean, they thought I was the biggest terrorist in the world, you know what I'm saying? So now I have license plates in my vehicle that's not directly in my name, which is nice, so that when a cop pulls me over, it's not like SWAT. As soon as they run my plates, I'm like, so they'll run my plate, they recognize it's me, they come up to the vehicle, I'll give them my driver's license, and I'll tell them I'm the January 6er. When you run this, it's going to show up this way on your report. He goes back to the vehicle, no big deal. I don't have 20 people showing up. It's not a big hairy deal. You see what I'm saying? Because they understand what it's about. But how many people are put in the wrong situation and they're frustrated with the system? They've already been in jail, been through all this, and then they're confronted by a police and it escalates. They can turn into a really bad situation. So every January 6er needs to make sure their record is scrubbed. They actually have the ability to purchase a gun, and whatever's on their system has been taken away. And I'm working hard to try to get a hold of Congress, because they're the ones that have federal oversight. But it's pretty sad when some of you could have a record. You might have say someone faked a felony on your record. None of you have the ability to steal it on your record. And you don't even know if you could be in trouble for something that you may or may not do because you can't see what's there. That's very disconcerting. And if somebody were to tell me that I couldn't look at my own record, I would have called them a liar. Because, and here's the problem. Under our Constitution, we believe as individuals in the United States, we're the greatest nation in the world. And yeah, we have the lowest education system. I mean, every metric you measure a nation by, production, whatever, we're the lowest in the world. So what makes our nation great? It's not all the metrics you think. It's not because they're free. I said the biggest illusion that we have as individuals is thinking we're free. And what did Great Britain say about their people? The best way to keep the slaves is to make them think they're free. The bottom line is, the difference between a slave and us is at least a slave knows he's a slave. Us as American citizens, we haven't recognized that. That's the biggest problem that we have right now. We've got to realize that we're in a slave system, we're being controlled. We are not the greatest nation in the world. And I want to step back one area when I say that. The only reason we are the greatest nation in the world is not because of all the metrics you measure a nation by. The biggest reason and the reason that sets us apart from the rest of the world and makes us the greatest nation in the world is we have the ability to do tyranny, and we've always done it. That's what makes us great. We set the example for the world. And me standing up, you standing up, that's what makes America great. Always defeat tyranny. And if we can remember how our country was formed and why it was formed, we're going to create significant changes because we have the ability to do that.
Hallelujah.
That was good.
Any last questions?
I got a question if nobody else has one.
We got one more question, sir.
You just wrapped up.
Hey, we have done, our group in the past has held common law courts. If you can't get justice there, would you like to entertain the thought that you'd like us to do a common law court in your case?
Well, if we can be successful on that, I don't have a problem with it whatsoever. I mean, the bottom line is we need to reinstate the Constitution back into our society again. What the process is and the means to get there, I think those are a little bit uncharted territory. But I believe right now, because of what Trump has done, we now have the avenue to do that. So let me express as to what has happened, so all of you understand where we're at right now in history. Why January 6th? I told January 6th is the new 4th of July. Because of January 6th, we've overturned some substantial laws by the Supreme Court. One was the 1512. Does anyone in the room, in the audience there, know what other law was overturned when the 1512 was overturned? Because it's the most important one of all, because it gives you the way to lead back to the Constitution. Can anyone remember what the Supreme Court ruled on? What court case that was?
And that was the 1512? That 1512
and there was one other. There was one of them. What was the other one that was so important that we overruled?
Glenn, you know what it is? Chevron. How about the Chevron case?
Amen. You guys got it. You know why the Chevron case was important?
Because they're all arbitrators. Judges
The
are
Chevron
arbitrators.
case was the same reason why they overruled the 1512. They're identical. What did the judge rule in the 1512? You have to use it as it was written, right? The 15 was overruled. So the Chevron case was overruled because Congress wrote certain laws, and the Federal Protection Agency and all these other companies reinterpret the law, just like they've done with the Constitution. Our founding fathers, the day you put attorneys in the office, the day they'll change the meaning of the words, and the Constitution will be null and void. The 1512 was probably the most paramount incident in our history since we've been taken over by the corporation of Britain that basically said that they can no longer interpret the law. It has to be done as written. So that means every case and every law that's on the books right now, what the Supreme Court ruled on by overturning 1512 can now be challenged.
Right. Yeah.
That's what it means. So that's our way back to the Constitution.
Right. There's a gentleman that's going across the country right now that's trying to inform the judges of that decision.
He's not speaking about the 1512.
Yeah. What's that gentleman's name?
Tawana
Tawana Downing is doing it.
Yeah, you can inform the judges, it doesn't mean nothing. You have got to put the situation where the judge violates the law of the right. And then we appeal it in court.
Okay. Dan, you got a question?
Yeah. I have two. So, my understanding, courts are UN courts, that the judges took oaths to the UN. They gave up their sovereignty or their U.S. citizenship to be a UN peace officer in the IRS agent's manual for an IRS agent. And so, do you believe that the Chevron deference is the reason why they overruled that, because people were starting to find that out?
Well, no, the Chevron basically was showing overreach by government. We got to understand there's two issues at play. We haven't covered the other leg. Basically, we kicked out one of their legs. You know what I'm saying? You got to kick out the other one. The one leg that was kicked out that the court system had was the interpretation of the law. So now they can't interpret it. But that doesn't mean the law passed by Congress was even legit in the first place. That's the other end of that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And that puts us back into the Constitution once we kick the other leg out. But being we kick one of their legs out, we have basically taken away the power of that judicial system. In other words, when I say the judicial system, I'm talking about the prosecutors and I'm talking about the judges only. We have taken their power away from them. We haven't taken the power away from Congress because we got to show that they're in treason and that they violate the law, and then we go back to the Constitution. So obviously, we can hold one part of the judicial system accountable. We just can't hold the other part yet. But that's coming because that's why the whole case with the Brunson case is asking whether their oath of office has any meaning, and if it does, they violate their oath of office, which means Congress has committed treason. And some of them haven't even sworn into office, so they shouldn't even be in there in the first place, and they need to be removed at this instant. That's where we gain power back on the other end of that. So we go back into the Constitution, get both legs out of their power play that they have right now.
Yeah, my understanding, Congress gave our sovereignty to the UN and also when they formed the UN. My other question.
That would be the case, but here's the problem. Even though that you can say that, the problem is how do you prove it? You prove it by asking the question, does the oath of office mean something?
Correct.
And if they swore a second oath that violates their oath of office, they shouldn't even be in office to begin with. That's really the problem.
Yes, I believe that, yeah. My other thing is that a few of us joined in Scotland, there's a common law community called the Croonin community. The website is www.common law court, and they have taken court cases into Britain's International Common Law Court and have won. Is that something that you might be interested in maybe accelerating to an international level?
Well, let me go over those cases because they're very important. Now, you got to understand, even though there's people that have won, and we won the same way, it wasn't a win because they're not admitting that they were wrong. It's not an issue to go after them for damages. You see what I'm saying? So it's not really good. Most of the time when we go in the straw man argument and all this type of stuff, usually the court system doesn't proceed forward because they don't have any grounds to. You don't have any grounds to. There's no damages done. They kind of walk away because we do it in what's called a stalemate situation. Yeah. Stalemate's not a win. No. It just means we're hopefully holding our ground, but neither one can move forward. So we're never going to have victories there. If we prove a point that they don't have any jurisdictional value, yes. Can we operate on the system and conduct business as normal? Are we going to be able to be efficient at that? No. Are they going to overpower us financially and eventually get us in a trap because we don't know the legal procedure because they do, and eventually trap us later? Absolutely they will. So we're not really winning. It just shows that we have some standing, but we don't have enough substantial standing to go back into the grounds of the Constitution, which if we did, we would have these people before war tribunals and hold them accountable. That's why we in the military has done what they've been doing to uncover this fraud so we can completely expose them to the world and hold these people accountable. That's why January 6th is going to be paramount in this whole situation, because it's going to lead us across the victory line for accountability because of what we've done.
Thank you for your time.
The military's going to have to get involved.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Final opportunity.
Is there anything we can do for you in our limited capacity?
You know, I don't even know what that is, but I do have a really big favor to ask if we can ever figure this out. Because January 6th is the biggest opportunity we have to help other patriots. You got to understand, even though I consider myself a patriot, and even though you think, well, man, you've done a lot, I'll be honest with you, some of you have done so much more than me because you fought a battle you couldn't win. We weren't in a position to get control. We weren't organized in that sense. The military wasn't backing us. We didn't have a president backing us. So there's a lot of patriots who fought really hard. And those are the people who made the biggest sacrifice because they did it not knowing they'd ever win their victory. Does that make sense? And some of you have basically been uncovering this fraud for a long time. Even though I know I'm going to have the victory, even though we're going to get across the finish line and gain victory for everyone, there's many people that have paved the path before us that have this opportunity. But where we need to be right now, this is what's paramount in my situation. Are you still there? I think I lost.
Okay, you're back.
So, Daniel, call me back again. I'll put you back on there. I think we lost our communication.
Okay.
Are you there? Can you hear me?
Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
I
Yes.
can hear you, yeah. Yeah, I had just one statement I would wanted to make, is I think that the January 6ers and President Trump did a great deal to expose the weaponized judicial system, and I think that there's going to be major changes to it as a result.
Well, I absolutely agree. And if it was Trump doing what he did, we wouldn't be where we're at right now. But you got to remember, Trump's the Lord's anointed. He was appointed for such a day as this. I don't believe Trump ever really wanted to be president. I think he's been part of the plan from the very beginning. Mar-a-Lago was built to be the second capital of the United States. Everyone said I was crazy, and then they basically came out and said that. So he's been part of this from the beginning. But I believe that he was asked to run as president, and I believe he realized how powerful the deep state had become. And a bunch of prophecies came from end to him. I'd love to hear what the prophecies were, but it made Trump bulletproof, and he's willing to stand up like no other. He's been trained for this in a sense of he's been around the deep state players. He knew how the Clintons worked. He knew their system. What a better person to know how the whole system operates and call him out. And then that's why they turned on him when he started to run to be president, because they knew that he knew everything about him, and they were in big trouble. But he's been bulletproof. He's held the line. He's done what he's supposed to do. He hasn't caved in, and I have a lot of respect for anyone who's willing to fight and not cave in. And I tell every January 6th this. You get upset when I said, what if Trump were to plea bargain like you did in his court case? Think he would have been elected as president again? That was the question.
You called me at a bad time. Call me back in about
What was the question?
And then that's why we all need to stand up and fight. Because
I'm in a
if you
meeting
don't
right
fight,
now.
I mean, nobody likes a person that's willing to give up in a situation. We all need to hold the line.
Hank, we did not hear your comment. You were about to tell us at the end, after someone asked you what we could do for you, you just were about to say something, and then that's...
Hear me? Is everybody still there?
Yeah. We're here.
You can't hear us.
We're here. We're here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, did it go off? Did it need to be the code? Testing.
Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear us now?
Can you hear us now? Yeah, I must have lost you there for a minute. I don't know where I dropped out at.
Oh, we heard everything. Yeah, we heard
getting feedback.
We heard pretty much everything that you stated. My last question
Maybe it's time to fucking end it.
was, what was it that we were doing for you?
Okay. It's not just for me. We need to find someone who can put together a documentary, a video documentary. I mean, something like Hollywood style, where we can tell the story of what happened, the weaponization of the government, what they did to me. I want to show what happened to me the whole time I was in the Capitol. Even have to speed it up 15, 30 times speed, so take 45 minutes, turn it in 10 minutes. So no one can say they didn't see the entire footage, that I did anything wrong, and they can see what the government's done. And I want to show what they did in trial versus what happened, and how they portrayed the situation in the courtroom to try to convict me on assumptions, presumptions, and lies at best. And they can entrap anyone. If they can do it to me, they can do it to the President of the United States, they can do it to you, and they've done it to Trump. And that's what I told everyone. This is where it's going to go. And anyone, I mean, here I am an example. I entered the Capitol, was outside the Capitol, they got arrested. If they were to get through all of us, if Trump didn't step in, everyone that showed up that day would have been 2 million people, would eventually be arrested. And anyone who funded them would eventually be arrested. That's where they were going to go with all. They were going to go after everybody. And the very nature of that should make us all stand up, take notice. And the people that went to jail, their story needs to be told so the world knows what happened, so that when the military does step in and take these people out, we don't have a rebellion, we don't have to go fight against the military, we have a common enemy. The public needs to know without any question of doubt. They can't believe the media or how they should use the information, how they can take things out of context. And I think most people believe that our judicial system is like the holy of holies. And that if you got prosecuted or you got charged, you must have done something wrong. Because we believe we're the greatest nation on the face of the earth, and that's the biggest lie ever sold to the American people, and that's what's enslaved us this whole time. And we need to give people the facts, we need to give them the information, we need to give them the video presentation. My story is one thing. To see the video evidence to go with it, to back up my story, is paramount. Then nobody can say, well, that's just what you're saying, I don't want to believe it. Well, look at the video, all the evidence is there, there's nothing missing. But yourself, how would you feel if you were in my shoes?
Right.
That's what we need to do. We need some good video presentations. We need to make documentaries of these things. We need to bring that forward. So anyone who can get in touch with me, who's willing to put all this information together, and I still got more discovery to do in my case that they haven't provided because they're withholding a few things. I want to have all of it so people can see what really occurred and set the record straight.
Okay, Hank. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Hank. We appreciate it, Hank. Talk to you later. God bless.
God bless you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.